Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are taking a whole stack of sources on film art, and, well, we're going deep.
We really are.
The goal here is to move beyond just watching a movie, you know? We want to understand the complex, the really deliberate choices behind every single moment you see on screen.
It's like getting the ultimate decoder ring. We're trying to give you the foundational vocabulary. We're talking form, we're talking style that film students use to really analyze a movie.
So the mission is to transform how you watch movies from just passive viewing into, I guess, an active appreciation of the architecture of it all.
Exactly. The architecture of cinema.
So let's unpack the core conflict right away, something our sources are calling the film paradox.
Right.
Film came about in the late 19th century, and it was a mass medium, pure public amusement, and a giant business.
It's always been about making money.
So how can we legitimately turn around and call it art?
Well, what's fascinating is that every art form, painting, theater, it's always had economic ties. But film really earns that title, art, because it gives filmmakers these unique, sophisticated ways to design very specific, very controlled experiences for you, the viewer.
Ah, so it's about the control.
It is. Our sources point out that cinema always comes from this tension between three things. The filmmaker's imagination, the machines, the cameras, and so on, and crucially, the financiers.
That tension, the art versus the business, that must be why control is everything. The artistic side is all about the choices a filmmaker makes.
And those choices fall into two major categories. The first one is form.
Okay, what is form?
Form is the film's overall pattern, how all the individual parts, every scene, every shot work together to create a specific emotional or, intellectual effect.
And the second category?
Is style. And style is the practical side of it. It's the filmmaker's toolkit. It consists of four key elements. Mise en scène, that's everything in front of the camera, cinematography, editing, and sound.
All right, let's start the absolute ground floor then. The technology itself. I mean, film at its core is just a series of still pictures or frames.
Right.
The fact that we see motion at all is a monumental trick, isn't it?
It's a total physiological cheat. The illusion relies on two main factors. First, something called critical flicker fusion.
Okay.
Our eyes, our visual system, it needs a certain number of flashes per second for light to seem steady. That threshold is about 48 flashes.
So films are shot at 24 frames per second. How does that work?
Well, the projector has a shutter that breaks the light beam, and it shows each of those 24 frames twice.
Doubling it to 48.
Exactly. It hits that magic number and achieves a stable, steady light. The technology itself is engineered to trick us.
And the second factor?
The second factor is apparent motion. If you change a visual display fast enough, replace one still image with a slightly different one very, very quickly, our eyes are just fooled into seeing continuous movement, even though it's not actually happening.
And the way we capture those images has changed profoundly.
Yeah.
We went from physical film stock to digital.
Oh, yeah. For nearly a century, it was all 35mm film. You had a physical negative strip, and the final positive print was made from that. That strip had perforations along the edge, the gauge, to make sure it moves uniformly through the camera.
And the soundtrack was physically on there too, right?
Inscribed right on the side as pulses of light. It's an incredible piece of engineering.
But now we're all digital. So what's the real difference for us, the audience?
Well, digital cameras use sensors with microscopic diodes that create pixels. The biggest difference is just resolution, the sheer density of the image. We move from high def to the current standard of 2K and 4K.
And 4K is, what, 4 times the information of 2K?
4 times the information, which means a dramatic increase in texture, in lighting nuance, in all the detail the filmmaker can control. The final movie isn't a reel of film anymore. It's a heavily encrypted hard drive called a digital cinema package, or DCP.
Okay, so that brings us to the logistics. This isn't just art, it's a huge manufacturing process. 4 distinct phases of decision-making. Phase 1 is script writing and funding.
And this is where the producer is king or queen. They're the ones getting the money, hiring people, and this is critical arranging distribution. We think of the director, but the producer is the financial architect.
And you have different kinds of producers.
You do. The line producer, for example, is like the on-the-ground CFO watching the day-to-day budget.
And understanding where that money goes is key.
It's a really clear split. You have above-the-line costs. That's the big-ticket talent. The script, the director, the major movie stars.
And then everything else
is below the line. The crew, the sets, the equipment, insurance, publicity, the sum of those two is the negative cost. And this really explains a lot about the pressures on a film.
Because the star's salary might be bigger than the entire set construction budget.
And that forces creative compromises on the technical side, absolutely.
Okay, money's in place. Phase 2, preparation or pre-production. This is where the director really takes over the final look and sound.
This is all about visualization. You have the production designer figuring out the settings, the art director building them, but the most important tools here are the storyboard and something called pre-visualization animatics.
So like a cartoon version of the movie?
Essentially, yeah. They're animated rough drafts used to plan complex action scenes, test camera moves, and even show investors exactly what their money is buying.
Then phase 3, shooting, principal photography, cameras are rolling.
And the person keeping it all straight is the script supervisor. They track every detail for continuity. But the visual language is managed by the cinematographer, the DP, who works with the director on lighting and camera technique.
And they don't just shoot the scene once.
Oh no, they'll do a master shot that records the entire scene, start to finish. Then they get what's called coverage closer shots, different angles.
Seems really inefficient.
It is, but it gives the editor options. And remember, they almost never film in plot order. They shoot what's cheapest and easiest to group together on any given day.
Which brings us to phase 4, assembly, post-production. This is where it all comes together. The editor looks at the dailies, or rushes.
To create the rough cut and then eventually the final cut. But post-production is all about polish. A huge job is digital color grading. A colorist makes sure the look is totally consistent, even if shots were filmed days apart in different weather.
And then there's sound. People think they hear what was recorded on set.
But they almost never do. Most dialogue is actually replaced later. It's called automated dialogue replacement, or ADR. Actors go into a booth, watch themselves, and re-record all the lines.
And sound effects are added separately.
Often using the Foley process, where artists create sounds with props in a studio. So dialogue, effects, music, they're all in separate tracks, all carefully layered together. The final soundscape is almost entirely artificial.
Now that we've covered the nuts and bolts, let's pivot to structure to narrative form. Because filmmakers don't just engineer what you see, they engineer your curiosity, your expectations.
And the distinction between story and plot is absolutely critical here. I think most people use them interchangeably.
But they're very different things.
Completely. The story is just the chain of events in chronological order, the full timeline of everything that happens from beginning to end.
And the plot, then, is how the filmmaker chooses to present that story to us.
Exactly. Using flashbacks, jumping around, focusing on one character. The plot is the roadmap the filmmaker gives you to build the story in your own head.
And everything inside that story world. There's a term for that.
It's called the diegesis, everything that exists in the story's world. But then you have non-diegetic elements, things from outside that world, like the opening credits or a big orchestral score that the characters obviously can't hear.
That score is the filmmaker talking directly to us.
It's them talking over the characters' heads, yeah. A total violation of the world they've built, but it works.
So causality is how we connect events, but manipulating time is the primary tool here. The simplest methods are the flashback and the flash forward.
Right. They let the plot intentionally mess with the chronological sequence to create suspense or surprise. A perfect example is Pulp Fiction.
Oh, definitely.
The story's events happen in a linear order, but the plot is completely shattered. It starts with a scene that actually happens later in the story's timeline, which just hooks you immediately.
And it gets even more complex when you start playing with duration and frequency.
Yes. Screen duration can compress or expand story time. A journey that takes weeks can become a 10-second montage. But frequency is the really powerful tool. It lets an event be shown multiple times, maybe from different perspectives.
And each time you learn something new.
Or you learn something that contradicts what you thought you knew.
Christopher Nolan is the master of this.
He's the modern master, absolutely. Look at Dunkirk. He's not just telling 3 simultaneous stories. He's telling 3 simultaneous stories that are all happening at different rates.
A week on the beach, a day on the boat, and an hour in the air.
And the plot cuts them all together as if they're happening at the same time.
Yeah.
It forces you to process multiple durations at once. That's incredibly complex time manipulation.
And narrative control is also about how much we know. This is narration range.
So, with restricted narration, the plot limits our knowledge to just one character. It creates huge curiosity and surprise. This is classic mystery structure, like in The Big Sleep. You only know what the detective knows.
And the opposite would be
Unrestricted or omniscient narration, where we, the audience, know and see more than any single character in the film.
And depth is about how far we get inside a character's head.
Exactly. We can have objective depth, where we just see their external behavior, what they do and say. Or we can get subjective depth, where we actually access their internal experience.
Like through a point of view shot.
A POV shot is what we call perceptual subjectivity. Or we could get mental subjectivity, where we literally hear their inner thoughts.
Okay, let's shift focus to the visuals now, to the application of style. And the first major element is mise en scène, which literally means...
Putting into the scene. It's everything the director controls that appears inside the frame.
So that's setting, costume and makeup, lighting, and staging.
All of it.
Right.
The setting can be a real place or built in a studio. A prop is just an object in the setting that has a function, and it can become a powerful symbol or motif.
Lighting, though, that feels crucial. It sculpts the image, it guides our attention.
We can break lighting down into 4 aspects. First is quality. You have hard lighting, which creates sharp, defined shadows. And then you have soft lighting, which is much more diffused and even.
Then there's direction.
Right. Light from the front tends to flatten things out. Light from the side carves out features. And backlighting is what gives you those powerful, dramatic silhouettes.
So if the key light is the main light source, what happens if a filmmaker gets rid of the fill light? That's the one that softens shadows, right?
Ah, that's where you get the magic. If you take away the fill light, you move away from standard 3-point lighting, and you get immediate low-key lighting.
Which creates that sharp contrast, that chiaroscuro effect.
And you instantly associate that with mystery, suspense, horror. It's the classic look of film noir.
Okay, moving from staging to the camera itself. The second element of style is cinematography. The frame limits what we see, but filmmakers use off-screen space so cleverly.
They really do. Just by suggesting something is out of view, hearing a shout from another room, footsteps you can't see, they build suspense without showing you a thing.
And the framing, the scale of the shot, that has a huge emotional impact.
We define shots by distance. You go from an extreme long shot where a person is tiny all the way to a close-up, just the head, and even an extreme close-up, just a part of the face.
But the key insight here is that a certain kind of framing doesn't always mean the same thing.
No, context is everything. The famous low-angle shots in Citizen Kane often suggest his power, sure. But our sources point out those exact same shots are used when he's at his most humiliated, framing him from below but making him look isolated and defeated.
And the camera doesn't always stay still. We have the mobile frame.
A mobile frame is when the camera physically moves. You have the pan, which is swiveling side to side. A tilt is up and down. A tracking or dolly shot is when the camera actually travels along the ground.
And a crane shot moves above ground. But a zoom is different.
A zoom is different. It's an optical change. It just magnifies the image. It doesn't actually alter the spatial relationship between objects the way a real dolly shot does.
I think it's important to distinguish between a long take and a long shot.
That is a very common point of confusion. A long shot is about distance, how far the camera is. A long take is about duration. It's a single shot that lasts for a very long time without a cut.
Sometimes a whole scene, a sequence shot.
Exactly. And a film like Russian Ark, which is one single 90-minute take, shows you just how much energy and planning goes into it when you can't hide anything with an edit.
And that leads us perfectly into the unseen magic, editing and sound. These are the things designed to go unnoticed, but they construct the final experience.
They absolutely do.
The basic transition is a cut. It's the most common. But the real magic is how those cuts create meaning, how we fill in the gaps.
Well, we have to talk about the Kuleshov effect.
What?
This is like the bedrock concept. It proves that editing creates thought.
This is the experiment with an actor's neutral face, right?
That's the one. They intercut the exact same shot of a neutral face with different images. A bowl of soup, a dead woman, and the audience projected emotions onto the actor. They thought his expression changed from hunger to sorrow.
But it was all in the editing. The emotion wasn't in the performance.
It was created by the cut. It shows that we assume a spatial whole that was never actually there.
So the default system for making this all feel seamless is continuity editing.
Correct. It's designed to hide the fabrication, to make the cuts invisible. Key parts are the 180-degree system, which keeps screen direction consistent, the shot reverse shot for conversations, and the match on action.
Which is when a movement is carried across a cut.
Precisely. If someone starts to open a door in one shot and finishes the action in the next, your brain just smooths right over that cut.
We have seen a shift, though. Our sources call it intensified continuity in modern films.
It's an acceleration of those same principles. Faster cutting, much closer framing, a reliance on telephoto lenses. It's all designed for really rapid viewer absorption. It forces you to process information quickly.
Okay, let's move to the auditory world. We already said the soundtrack is built from scratch. Beyond the basics like pitch or loudness, sound also messes with space and time.
And this brings us right back to our narrative definitions. You have diegetic sound, which comes from inside the story world.
And non-diegetic sound, which comes from outside it, like that big orchestral score.
Sound also plays with time. Most sound is simultaneous, happening as we see it. But you can have non-simultaneous sound, which might be a memory or a premonition.
And a really smooth way to transition between scenes is the sound bridge.
The sound bridge is great. The audio from the end of one scene just lingers over the beginning of the next one. It eases the transition or connects two different ideas or timelines.
The Jackie Brown case study is an incredible example of using sound to control narrative range.
It's a perfect illustration of that restricted narration we talked about. Tarantino runs the big money exchange sequence 3 separate times.
And each time, the sound is different.
The sound mixing is completely different because each time it's tied to the restricted knowledge of a different character. Jackie, then Louis and Melanie, then Max. In Max's version, the sound mix is subjective. It draws our attention away from the main action because his attention is shifting. The soundscape tells us whose head we're inside.
That is just a phenomenal demonstration of style-serving form. It's sound and editing creating a truly subjective experience.
And that's really the big takeaway from this deep dive. The art of filmmaking is all about managing your expectations and controlling the flow of information through these deliberate choices in form and style.
Every single element, a long take, the pitch of the music, it's all a calculated decision.
It's designed to evoke a very specific experience in you.
And these calculated choices, they often get codified into genres, right? Which shape our expectations before the movie even starts. The style supports the theme.
Precisely. If you sit down to watch a horror film, you expect low-key, high-contrast lighting, because that stylistic choice aligns with the genre's theme of fear and the unknown. A musical, on the other hand, is usually all high-key, bright lighting.
So a final thought for you to take away. The next time you watch a trailer or you pick a movie just based on its genre, think about that. How are the predictable stylistic choices, the lighting, the speed of the cuts, the kind of music, how are they shaping your emotional reaction before the plot even really begins? What conventions are shaping your expectations right now?